So in today's video, we are talking about a new plugin from Waves called the Curves Resolve. So if you want to know what this plugin is all about and hear it in action, stick around after this introduction. Welcome everybody, my name is Dan Spencer and this is the Audio Sorcerer YouTube channel. So this is the place where we talk about music production, audio mixing, mastering, and even a little bit about music business. So if those topics interest you, make sure you hit that subscribe button, but also the notification bell so you never miss a new video when it comes out. And if you're looking for affordable and professional audio mixing and mastering services, make sure that you click the link below and you check out our website and sign up for the email list to get 20% off your first order. Now that that's all the way, let's actually talk about what the Waves Curves Resolve plugin is. So this plugin basically is a ducking plugin that gets rid of frequency masking. Okay, so you have a source track of audio. That's what this plugin goes on. You're going to feed in a sidechain audio track. Okay, and that sidechain audio is going to duck the source audio based upon masking frequencies. Okay, so for example, if I want a kick track to duck a bass track every time the kick hits, I'm going to use the kick track as the sidechain audio, and then the bass track is going to be the source audio. And then of course we have parameters and settings within the plugin. We can adjust for that. You can also do this for a vocal track against a full mix of music, which I like to do that, and that's actually how we're going to demo this. Okay, so there are a lot of use cases for this plugin. So there are competitors for this plugin. One I use is actually Mastering the Mixes Fuser. And I believe also Isotope's Neutron has some features like this in it, okay? So in this video, I'm going to take you through the user interface so you know how to actually use the plugin, and then we're gonna demo it with a vocal track against a full mix. So you have a good idea of what this plugin can do. And if you like this plugin, I do have a link in the description below where you can go purchase it. And with that being said, let's get further into this video and let's look at the user interface of the Waves Curves Resolve plugin.
All right, so here we are in Pro Tools and I have the Waves Curves Resolve plugin open. So if you watch this channel and you see my plugin reviews, you know that I like to do an overview of the user interface and talk about all of the controls within a plugin. So if this portion does not interest you, I do have timestamps below and you can fast forward to the demo portion of the video. So talking about the user interface here, we're going to start at the top. This is the sidechain portion of the plugin. So actually, before I talk about this section here, I should mention in Pro Tools how we send a signal to a plugin sidechain-wise. We have to go to the key input here, go to the drop-down and select a bus here. And we need to be sending that sidechain signal to a bus, okay? And then we need to select the bus we're actually sending it to here, and that's how we get it into the plugin. So of course, that's going to be different in other DAWs. So hopefully if you are watching this video and you're not using Pro Tools, you already know how to do that. So back to the main sidechain section here. So on the left here, we have tilt. On the right here, we have filter. Filter is your high pass and low pass. Tilt is like your high shelf and low shelf and kind of a combination of both. These don't actually apply like a high pass and low pass to your end signal. They actually affect the tonal weighting of the sidechain signal, okay? So that's like what's happening to the signal of the sidechain and then applying that towards the overall calculation of what's being applied to the end goal, okay? Honestly, to make this plugin use easy, I recommend just leaving this on the default, okay? Don't even worry about it. And with that being said, we're just actually going to move on to the middle section here, which actually is important. So the first one here, which is a snowflake here, this actually just captures a momentary snapshot of the sidechain. So if maybe you just want to, I don't know, grab like 3 seconds of your sidechain signal, you could do that by using the freeze button here, okay? Now, the main one here is the learn button. It says relearn now here because I actually learned a track, but initially it's going to say learn. So this is where you're going to play in your audio here, and it's going to build the curve, and it's going to apply it against your main track here, all right? So we're going to do this in the demo. And then this one here, you can actually load an audio track onto here and then grab the whole entire frequency spectrum, you know, from start to finish. So that's pretty cool. And that's pretty much the whole, you know, sidechain section here. You'll get some graphical stuff in here when we actually start, you know, playing the track. So this middle section here is mostly graphical, but also has several controls in it actually. So we have our crossovers, which are the vertical bars here, and we can turn those on and off here. And then the horizontal bar here is where we can adjust our thresholds to get more or less gain reduction per crossover section, okay? We can also turn off these grid lines here, okay? You'll see more in here when we actually start playing some music. Now this section here below is really the meat and potatoes of the plugin. This knob here is what tells the plugin how much of the effect do you want. And you can crank it really high and get a really pumping effect, which is not what you want. You obviously want to kind of blend this in to the point where that, you know, if you're doing it on vocals against music, when the singer stops singing, you want to make sure that the music sounds like it's very natural and it just sounds just as, you know, the vocals drop out and the music doesn't sound any different. You don't want it to sound like the vocalist stops singing and the music gradually gets super loud. That is not what you want, okay? So you got to be careful with this here, but, you know, it will be obvious, okay? So this knob here is what we use to set the plugin as a whole. Now, dynamic and steady, this changes depending on whether you turn on the ducky, which is the ducker setting, and we're actually going to be using this as a ducker. We'll talk more about that in the demo, but when it's not in the ducker setting, it's basically more used as trying to get the sound to be more nestled into the track. You know, whatever you're using it for, it's more nestled in there, okay? And you can use it as more dynamic or steady. It's really better to use it on the dynamic side, or at least towards the middle, because that's going to make it more frequency based. And, you know, that's just the way you use these kind of plugins, okay? So always gear more towards the left on this one here. Now, if you turn on the ducky, you get some different settings here. You get wide and you get unmask. So this one here, I prefer keeping it in the center. Wide is just going to duck the whole frequency spectrum. I don't know. That's kind of useless to me. It's just like, what's the point? You know, it's just like a full-fledged ducker at that point. Unmask at that end is going to be very sharp frequency based. In the center, it's going to be more smooth, but still kind of, you know, look at the specific frequencies you want to duck based on your sidechain signal. So I like to keep this in the center when using the ducker, sorry. I like to call it a ducky. And then over here on the right, this is where you can really fine tune your sidechain signal by picking what it actually is. So you can do full range, which is going to be the full spectrum. You can do vocals, dialogue, choir, bass, all this good stuff here. You know, it is subjective. In my situation here for this particular demo, I'm actually going to be doing full range, even though I'm doing a vocal track, because I'm kind of putting it against the full song. Again, it's subjective, but you could, you know, do it however you want to do it. Full range is actually kind of safe just because you're covering the full spectrum. If I was going to be doing, you know, what would be, I guess, kick against bass, you know, I want the bass to duck every time the kick hits. I would probably choose kick in that scenario because that's like a one-to-one instrument. But if I'm doing something like a vocal track against a full mix of music, then I might do full range. That's my personal preference after playing with this plugin, okay? So that's that section here. Here's the advanced controls, and you might be mad at me, but I'm not going to go over these, and I'll tell you why, because Waves always throws in a bunch of advanced controls, and let me tell you this, I use the advanced section in Waves plugins as much as the Cleveland Browns win a Super Bowl, okay? So I'll leave it at that. So let's actually move on to the demo portion of this video, and you guys can see this plugin in action. All right, so the song we're working with here is called No Saints in Dallas by Alan Cross. This is a country rock project that I worked on at the end of last year, and it is a very thick sounding song, so we need to make sure that we get the vocals to cut through in the mix. And I looked back at my, you know, mix master here, and I see that I was using mastering the mixes fuser here. And you can see that I have it bypassed, and I have curves resolve in its place. So let's actually learn in the vocal track, and let's see what this thing can do.
No saints in Dallas, just shadows and hills, neon confessions and late night deals. You can pray for love 'neath the church house bell, but the city will teach you a different spell. No saints.
right, so we are ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop up a larger portion of the song, and I'm literally going to play it for a couple minutes, and I'm going to just mess with the parameters. I'm going to over-exaggerate some things. I'm going to let you really hear what this plugin can do. And by the end, I'll have it dialed into where I like it, and then we'll talk about what I did, and I'll give you my overall thoughts on the plugin. So let's dial this thing in and hear what it can do.
That her heart had never been taken, but her lies were smooth as the ground she was shaking. In the glow of the bars and the hum of the band, I was another fool holding her hand. Every corner had a whisper, a name I knew. Every light felt colder when the truth shone through. I learned quick that love ain't free, and it sure as hell ain't what it's dressed up to be. No saints in Dallas, just shadows and hills, neon confessions and late night deals. You can pray for love neath the church house bell, but the city will teach you a different spell. No saints in Dallas, just the stories that her heart had never been taken, but her lies were smooth as the ground she was shaking. In the glow of the bars and the hum of the band, I was another fool holding her hand. Every corner had a whisper, a name I knew. Every light felt colder when the truth shone through. I learned quick that love ain't free, and it sure as hell ain't what it's dressed up to be. No saints in Dallas, just shadows and hills, neon confessions and late night deals. You can pray for love neath the church house bell, but the city will teach you a different spell. No saints in Dallas, just the stories that her heart had never been taken, but her lies were smooth as the ground she was shaking. In the glow of the bars and the hum of the band, I was another fool holding her hand. Every corner had a whisper, a name I knew. Every light felt colder when the truth shone through. I learned quick that love ain't free, and it sure as hell ain't what it's dressed up to be. No saints in Dallas, just shadows and hills, neon confessions and late night deals. You can pray for love neath the church house bell, but the city will teach you a different spell. No saints in Dallas, just the stories that her heart had never been taken, but her lies were smooth as the ground she was shaking. In the glow of the bars and
All right, cool. So obviously you heard earlier in the demo when I was over-exaggerating things what that fader here, the wide and unmasked did for the ducker, and then of course the dynamic and steady did when I cranked this middle knob. And then also you heard too when the vocalist stopped for that split second at the end of the chorus, how the music shot up. That's what I was talking about earlier. Okay, so that's how you don't use this plugin. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Now, I was actually kind of surprised that I wanted to use the ducker setting. I wasn't expecting that, but when I actually read the manual, the ducker setting was right for my scenario. I wanted the vocals to cut through the mix, and the ducker setting is what the manual says to use for that. The other setting, the non-ducker setting, don't really know what that's called, but that is the default setting. That's when you want something to be nestled within the mix, okay? So yes, the ducker. And I thought that I can really hear those mid-range frequencies cutting through a lot better when I use the ducker setting. And it is very subtle. I think in my demo here, if you're not using headphones, you might not really be hearing it. And if you were looking at the reduction, that is in this section here, it's blue. It's kind of right here where my mouse is at. I'm looking at minimal reduction, and we were getting up to -3. And I don't know, sometimes that's in my mind mentally too much. So I did end up lowering this at the very end. So we were probably hitting maybe almost -3. We're probably mostly around -2, -2.5 at that point. So that's where I kind of wanted to be with this here, because the vocal is in a pretty good spot. I mean, it's maybe just in a few tiny spots is where I wanted it to cut through just a little bit better. But overall, it's actually a really good mix and master. I'm very happy with it. So this is just really being nitpicky and fine tuning it. Okay. But overall, this is a great plugin. It has, a lot of extra parameters compared to Fuser. And yes, with extra parameters, it is a little bit harder to use, but I think between having the ducker and non-ducker settings, I think I can get more of what I want compared to Fuser. And I do see myself using this on future mixes, so I'm very happy with it. So I'd love to know what you think of this plugin. So leave me a comment in the section below. And if you like this plugin, I do have a link in the description where you can go purchase it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe because I love making this content for you, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video when it comes out. And if you like this content and you like waves, check out my review/tutorial on the Waves Curves AQ. And until the next video, I will see you guys later. Peace out.